Hello, Silas here, and I'm back for the Dishing on Dish series with my friend Steven. Say what's up to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well today.
So, this is a series where we talk about different food, and this is part of the Dishing on Dish series, which is a sub series under the You Are What You Consume series. And, Steven, please tell us a bit about the restaurant that we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. So today we're going to be discussing Felidia, which was actually my last place of employment here in the city. Unfortunately, this closed a combination of the pandemic, but also the restaurant had been open almost 40 years. So I think my boss just wanted to move on and focus on other things. Um, I stopped working there about, I think it was March of last year. And since then, I went upstate for a bit with my family. I came back to the city and I've been doing my investing, day trading. That could be a separate discussion. So I haven't been in restaurants, but this was the last restaurant I worked in. I started as a front waiter and then I became a floor manager. So that was Felidia's last floor manager, which again, we talked about in the previous video if you want to watch that one.
Yeah, this Your We Consume series pretty much just goes over different things with consumption. I met Steven first back in 2015, or was it 2016 or 2017?
I think it was about 20.
2015.
Yeah. Yeah. About
Because it was before
2015, I wasn't.
it
Yeah.
was before the dreaded Orange Man.
Yep.
So, we had we met in New York, and he was still working in the food service industry. And you can check out the conversation in I Know Great People, where Stephen goes a lot more into the food service industry. And some of the first conversations we had were about food and things like that. It was this You Are What You Consume series. So not just the proteins, the meats, and the fats that build up the bodies that animals make and other plants, but also just the things that go around them. And then now we recently, I think maybe a little over a year ago, we started more talking about this Dishing on Dish series, where Steven is a gourmand of sorts. He's someone who hasn't just worked in the back of the kitchens, walked in the front of the restaurants, front of house, back of house, and he's also somebody who really enjoys being in that and just enjoys food for the sake of food. Just he really eats good stuff. You can also check out his Instagram. Lots of pictures on there, and a lot of
Uh-huh.
those Instagram pictures have made it to this series where now we talk more about the details of the foods and things like that. And right now we are on Felidia, and we had a separate conversation in the You Are What You Consume series about how Steven ends all restaurants he works at. Like 50% of them are closed now. But that's part of the food service industry. But he tells us more details about Felidia and things like that. So y'all can most definitely also check that out for a lot more information about this restaurant before we get into the actual food. And Steven, this is going to be food that you've had personally from the place, some of the things you'd have made, some of the things have you had all these dishes that you personally, or some of these dishes, some things that you just wanted to share about?
So a number of the dishes were things that were on the menu that I was there. So as a front waiter, like some of the pasta dishes, I would actually help plate them and bring them to a table. Other dishes were things they had in the past, but like really caught my eye, so I decided to save the photo. A number of these are just dishes that it's a combination of it's either one of those plus they've been on the menu a long time. And I actually have the cookbook right here. I mentioned it a little bit last time. A lot of the signature dishes are in the book, so I'll probably, as the presentation goes on, I'll mention which ones are in the book. Like,
Okay.
well, we'll get into it. Like the cheese and pear ravioli, like that was on the menu 15 years. So that's in the book. And like, there's other things that were run as specials, but then it's a combination of certain things were Lydia's recipes, certain things were the chef. So then the book is kind of a compilation of what they wanted to include. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a certain amount of questions we normally talk about in the intro, and some of the intros are like 30 minutes long, but this one will be a lot shorter since you can refer to that other one. But let's just skim over these for the people who might just be listening to this one and not have the time to pause or have listened to the other one before. So tell us a bit about the location of where Felidia was. And this was, I most definitely check out the other series because it was really interesting the things he was telling us about it. It's a really unique actual location. So tell us a bit about the location.
Sure. So it was located on 58th between 2nd and 3rd. It was in an old townhouse. It was near the Roosevelt Island Ferry, for those who don't know. I'm trying to find it here, but if you look in the book, there's actually pictures of it when it was under construction.
Oh,
It's
cool.
pretty cool. Pretty cool here. So this is Lydia standing near the location, and this is the actual building itself being built. It's pretty interesting. Right now, it's interesting because the building looks the same as when it closed because they held on to the building. They decided to close at one point, and now I guess it's going to be taken over by a Korean place starting early next year. Um, The building itself is probably going to need a lot of work though, because it's like it's kind of cool, but it has kind of this old school look, which like
Yeah.
for what Felidia was, it works, but like a brand new place would look kind of strange. So they're probably going to redo it. It was an interesting area. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of it's like Upper East Side, so it's kind of a nice, wealthier area, but like there's not a whole lot going on as far as nightlife or anything. So that was always the joke. I think I mentioned before how people would ask us like, "What's cool to hang out around here?" And we're like, "There's really not a whole lot. It's like department stores, apartments, and there's like a few good places." So but it's it was a nice area. You used to walk by Bloomingdale's, all this, and there were a few other shops on that side. Trying to think what else is around there. Yeah, not a whole lot. Roosevelt Island Ferry, and there's that speakeasy I want to check out. The Japanese jazz place sounds kind of cool. Yeah, so that's for sale now. Did you have any other questions about the location itself? I was trying to think,
Yeah,
but I
no, that
didn't.
was a location, but there was you mentioned some of the ambiance already, so you can also tell us about the tables that were in there. I liked how it had that whole split level. That was like it seriously just looked like we might put pictures up. It just looked like a home. It just looked like somebody's house. So it was just converted into like a restaurant, and it's had that a unique look. There's probably not too many places in New York City restaurant wise that still have this look. You've been to a lot more and might know more, but it just struck. It came out to me, and as you mentioned, it's something that is probably one of the last places that you'll see like this, having it been open for 40 years. So yeah, tell us how many tables it had and how it was just kind of working in that space.
I'm trying to remember the table count exactly because there were a few different dining rooms. There was like a main floor, there was this little upstairs area, but then there were also a few private dining rooms. So there was a room I'll try to see if I can get a photo of it, but it's called the terrace, where it was kind of cool because it was kind of overlooking the main dining room, and it was like you could do like 10 or 12 people in there. Then there was the other PDR, which was sort of facing the front, so you could see like over the street. That was kind of nice. And then there was, depending on how busy the place was, there was one connected to that they would either open it as one big room, or they would split it up and they would put like a big table in the middle. So it depended on how many events there were. And then, the main dining room, if it was super slow, we'd actually close off sections of it. So towards the end, right before the lockdown, we were starting to do that because you have such a big dining room, you can't spread people out that much, and like you end up overstaffing. And it's just too much back and forth. I'm trying to remember how many people we did. I think we did maybe like 200 something covers. So it's not the busiest place I worked in, but it's not dead either. I mean, seasonal, the record I think was the low 100s, but Bar Balloon was 600. But also it's kind of hard to compare because they're all very different restaurants. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Seasonal was very small, and that's
yeah,
another one that we've had a conversation about with Seasonal, which is the second place Steven worked, and
yeah.
that was a really slimmer type of location. But you can check out that one. We had like it
Yeah.
was the longest one of the series. It was like 5 different parts, but it was really those. I'm also really excited for this one because many other restaurants, it's places that he's gone and talked to, but this is one of the restaurants we're also with with Seasonal. He was telling us about the different things he suggested to the meals and the things, and telling stories about the back of the kitchen and things like this, and just the thought process going in. So that kind of gave us a lot more insight into it, which I think is something cool about this series. I like this. That's why this is different than the You Are What You Consume, because now we're talking about more about dishes and try to go in. We'll get on certain tangents and things, go out to the woods and talk about other things. But yeah, it's a good series. And okay, so this was we've bookended with that. There's other places that we also have in this series coming up that Stephen has worked at that will be eventually up. Maybe if you're watching this in a few months or some few years from when we're recording, those will also be up as well. But okay, so the next one is if you can tell us a bit about now the content in this, and you'd mentioned that it is in Italian, but it was specific regions in Italy. So can you tell us a bit about the menu, if there was like fixed price or combos in it, and if there's was seasonal or varied or permanent, like you talked about the cheese, was it cheese and pear
Yeah.
ravioli, you said that had been there for pretty much the whole 40 years. So some of the things were constant, and unfortunately with this, part of why we say this is because in some places you can go there and try it for yourself, but this one, as Stephen mentioned, it's unfortunately closed, but the cookbook is there. So tell us a bit about the
But I would
cookbook.
also point out that I think I mentioned previously our Chef Fortunato, he actually went to Babbo and worked for a bit. And he brought a bunch of the items from Felidia over. So
Cool.
if you go to Babbo, you'll actually see a bunch of the items we talk about there. So kind of keeping the legacy alive. It got kind of a mixed reception though, because some people saw this and they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to turn Babbo into Felidia." But at the same time, it's kind of cool because Babbo does have its own items, but also he brought some of the stuff that is popular from Felidia, so you can get a bit of both, which I think is very nice. And you know, that's cool. Again, keeping the legacy alive. So the tasting, it was either you could either do a la carte, you could do prefix. There was I want to say 3 courses. I forget the price off the top of my head, or you could do a chef's tasting. The chef's tasting, it was a similar sort of like the I'll leave it up to you thing. Like if you have any allergies, they'll accommodate. But it was usually like an appetizer. I want to say 2 pastas. Then there was like a protein course and then dessert or something like that. And then it's again like if you say like, oh, I don't eat meat, okay, maybe he would substitute fish or something. There was a vegetarian tasting too, I want to say. That's, you know, usually came up with a series of items for that. But then like lunch and dinner, there were like either a la carte or like 3 course prefix where it's like 2 or 3 course prefix where it's like you get appetizer, entree, or you get appetizer, entree, dessert, and you spend like a little less than if you get a la carte, but you're limited to certain things. So yeah.
Yeah. And what region was it from?
Yes. So it was Piedmont. That's northwest. There's Friuli, that's northeast, and then there's Sicily. And Chef Fortunato himself was from Sicily, so that's why he brought a lot of those dishes. Yeah.
All right. Good, good. Yeah, and now the next part here is what was the challenge level of this? Like this, you'd already been relatively seasoned in the industry, so I guess getting there for you it was different challenges also because you took over the managerial role, so there was probably a lot of switches in the different things, and not as much in the back of house where you were like involved in the cooking of all the things, right? That's something that did change. But now, when you look at the cookbook, and we also normally ask us cookbook and classes, there's no classes because it's closed, but there is a cookbook. So what's the challenge level in general of some of these dishes that are in the cookbook?
I mean, for me, I would say probably intermediate. I mean, it would probably be a little easier than maybe some of the seasonal stuff. But at the same time, pasta is interesting to make. I don't know how many of you watching have made it, but it's one of those things it's fundamentally simple, but like it's hard to get exactly right because it's like you have to work the dough so much, you have to let it rest, you have to work it, let it rest again, and then you know if you cut it by hand, it has to be even or it'll cook unevenly. And it's one of those things that if you master, it's a very good skill to have, and you can do a lot on a menu. But like it's one of those that it's a bit harder than it looks, I would say. But you can also buy pasta machines. Batello, my other old job, maybe we'll talk about that. The chef had a pasta machine there. I think it was like $24,000 or something, but it was like this big industrial grade thing. It could crank out like hundreds of like whatever you wanted. So you have one of those, you can run like 5 or 6 pastas on the menu and like you're set. You could, you know, obviously if you're cooking at home, you could get a smaller version of this, probably, you know, cost maybe like low thousands, but I mean, still, it's like you could make whatever pasta you want. I mean, you could do pasta every day, you know, if you want to do.
What's the name of this beast? I want to see if we can get a picture of it. If you can find the name of it, let us.
Yeah, I would have to look because I remember it was funny. The owner of the place actually bought the executive chef it for a Christmas present, and he was like, the chef's like, "This is the sexiest thing I've ever seen, except for my wife."
Yeah, most definitely. I'll take a note of that. If you can find a picture of that, it shall be up on the screen while you was talking about it right now, because that sounds crazy. Was it digital or was it just completely like this mechanical? Was it like thing where you can just get like some pad and say, okay, I want some rigatoni or I want some ravioli,
So
rigatoni or like linguine. What was it?
So it was powered. I don't think it was digital, but it was mechanical where you'd plug it in and there was like a hopper or something you'd feed dough and there were different attachments. And the way it was automated in a way, so if you did like lumache, which looks almost like a snail shell, like it would like push a little bit through the die, then it would cut it off at a certain point, so it was a certain size, and then it would do another one and cut it off again. And would keep that way you had like all these even pieces of pasta, and then you would just collect them all, maybe toss some like semolina or flour on them so they don't stick together. Then you would just have them set to go to drop in the water when you're ready. Same thing with like the spaghetti or the other things, like it would run through, it would cut after a certain point. I know with some of the older, less sophisticated machines, you have to actually cut it yourself, so you control the length. But with this, I think it's set where it automates. So if you want it this long or that long, it'll cut it off after that point. Yeah. So really interesting. And it had all these different dyes. So like, you know, garganelli, lumache, casarecce, like all these shapes, you know, fold it this way, bend it that way. Yeah. Really cool stuff.
Yeah. I wonder, you could probably also go in and like I wonder if you change like implements, like add, like expand it to like reduce different things. Well, that's The things humans have managed to be able to make is pretty cool.
There's so many shapes of pasta too. It's crazy. It's like you could,
Yeah.
because like I said, I remember we used to have at Patello, I think there were like 3 or 4 pastas. Then he got this machine. He started doing like 6 plus, because with pasta, you figure it's the prep that's hard. Making the dough, like I say, that's a challenge. Once it's made, I mean, just drop it in the water and, sauce. I mean, that's not that hard. And then you put a bunch of those on the menu, people will order them. And also, I think pasta too, economically, is probably one of the best dishes, because it's like, flour, egg, water. It's like it costs you very little to make. And then you put it with the sauce, you charge, 15, $20 a serving. You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, here I just looked at ItalyMagazine.com. I don't know if they're not like the ones, but they say it's estimated there are approximately 350 different types of pasta and about 4 times that many names for them. So it's due to the fact that some types of pasta have different names in different languages, or even if it's the same language. In Italy, for example, names vary according to region or area. In addition, pasta manufacturers and cooks may come up with new shapes to give new names to old shapes, and the possibilities thus become endless. And Italian past names often end with the masculine plural suffixes. Not anymore in current timeline. Everything has got to be ah. Oh no, but ah is the feminine in Italian. So X. So change ini to, instead of linguini, linguinix. Boccarelli, then illy, I can't think of what is an illy? Can you think of an illy offhand?
Fusilli.
Fusilli. So instead of fusilli, fusilex. Instead of spaghetti, spaghettix, or feminine plural. There's also feminine plural, which is a ine and elle. Can you think of any in? Linguini? Is that, yeah, linguini is the ine?
Yeah, but it's ne, penne.
Oh yeah, linguini. No, it's
Linguini.
ine.
It's
It's
ine.
ine.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's a
yeah,
feminine
it's ine.
plural
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
ine, so in linguinix, and then elle. Can you think of an elle one? ELLE?
Yellow.
I can't think of one off the head.
Maybe I'd have to
So
check. I don't know.
whatever X, and then to convey the sense of little, or with oni or one to mean large. So rigatoni, I guess that would be one. Rigatoni, and riga is something to do with line, so large line. So that's the one where it's like kind of cylindrical with like larger ridges in it, I think, if I'm not correct. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
So rigatonics, and then one. I don't know any one ones. And then other suffixes exist of oti, and ochi. And then, yeah, so that's all names are plural, because you're not going to get spaghetti, spaghetti, so spaghetto. You never eat like a spaghetto, because with Italian, like the O is for singular masculine, and then I is masculine plural, and then A is for feminine single, and then E is feminine plural. So you'll never get a spaghetto. You'll never buy a spaghetto and eat just a spaghetto. So that's why it's like spaghetti with the I and the E. So yeah, that's just a little history, and that's the kind of stuff that you get here with dishing on dish.
There's somebody I used to make fun of. Oh yeah, it was the chef at I think it was the chef at Patello. How he's Italian by descent. And he actually worked in Italy, but like he said he used to speak it a bit, but like he's like lost complete track of the language, and he would mix this up where he would use like the singular for plural and vice versa. And like I know almost no Italian, but I hear this and I'm just like, I know this isn't right. Like
Yeah, it's an interesting language. Like it's definitely gone for me from when I was living in Turin, which is the last time I was in Italy. And like difference of living in Rome when people are speaking English, going to an American university, then going to Italy, Turin, where I'm like learning my postgrad in Italian, living with Italian people, going myself, not really having English speakers. Picked up the language, and then now my sister and my relatives is there. My nephew's like now fluent in it, and just speaking to him sometimes he switches between like English and that, and some Swahili in there. So yeah, it's an interesting language. I prefer, like, I learned French when I was a kid, but then French and Italian kind of tied. They have a different relationship with Spanish, even though those 3 languages kind of go together. But yeah, I don't know.
I was talking to Andrea and her friend last night, because her friend is from Colombia, and they both, Andrea speaks Spanish fluently, and then her friend speaks English fairly well. And I was saying how the German grammar to me was the most interesting, because like for example, like, okay, there's in Spanish you have el, la, los, and las for like the plural la, and in Spanish it's le, la, and le. In German it's der, die, das, dem, des, den, because it's like masculine, indirect, neuter, direct, all this. So like for example, if I say like the wine is good, like here, like I would say like der Wein ist gut, like you know it's masculine direct. But then if I say thanks for the wine, I say danke für den Wein because it's masculine and the direct object. And then if I say I'm drinking the wine on the table, it's something like ich trinke den Wein auf dem Tisch because table is masculine, but it's the indirect object. So for table it's dem. Yeah, it took me a bit to sort of like grasp this. Like I still don't have the best understanding, but it's like I took French in school. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely more complicated.
Yeah, with some of those things when it gets into the complication of the details and definitions, I like etymology, I like those type of things, but
Yeah.
I think I'm more intuitive in it. I don't think my mind breaks down and says, okay, when I'm saying this in English, I mean object, plural,
Yeah.
noun, adjective, this. I'm just like, no, I just learned from like the usage of it and reading and things like that. So I think that's how I learned languages. So when I'm not using it, it's going to be really tough for me to pick it up. But when I do pick it up, I also pick up the accents because languages are supposed to be spoken in the accents. That's part of why in a lot of American television and movies and things like that, they have the villains or they have the certain characters speaking English.
Yep.
And it just fits better. There's a reason the words and the languages. Just part of what this you art we consume is dishing on dish is to show like the history of these things were developed with certain things and certain flavors and certain tastes about the locations that came from there, communicating those the elements of the earth into somebody's body and intaking them is also the same way language communicates the ideas and experiences of the people there, and it's served and plated in a certain way that includes the accent. So that's something that I'm not really against when people are like, hey, you're not speaking English in the right way, because people do that with other languages and accept. You know, people like you go to Italy and you're speaking your Americanish accent, and they mock you. People are not like, oh, well, we can speak the way we want. But then somebody in America says, hey, you're kind of speaking English in an odd way, and they might mean American English rather than just English, but you get what I mean. There's things in there.
It's funny too because Angela was asking me, she's like, how close is English to German? And I was saying it's interesting because they say that over half of the English words have German roots. So if you see German written out, you'll see a lot of similarities, but the grammar is completely different. So it's like for example, you know, in English we would say I'm meeting my friend here, and in German you would say it almost like I am my friend meeting here or something. Like it's like the structure is different. So there's things like that it's like I remember because when I was trying to learn some German, I tried speaking to the German chef at Seasonal, but like I was speaking with the English grammar, and he's like, "Wow, that sounded kind of weird," because it's like he spoke English very well, but then he realized like how that would translate in German. It just doesn't sound right at all.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, as you mentioned that with like the different chefs. Like when you go to these places, in your experience at these different restaurants that you've been to, you don't have to be from a certain location in order to do that. Like there's nothing about you having Italian ancestry that will somehow just make you be able to pick up this Felidia cookbook and just be a lot better than somebody of Mexican ancestry who's actually worked at Felidia or who's trained in the things. That's part of what I enjoy about the foods and things that you can intake these things, but there is an aspect of it where there's a genuine aspect of it. And we're speaking of that before we start transitioning into talking about the actual food. How much of the American influence was there? This is one thing that still pisses me off to this day, is when I've talked about this before with the cheese thing, got to the United States of America I don't really remember mozzarella as a kid, might have had it when I was in France, but I remember getting to America and there was like string cheese. And I was like, I like cheese, and string cheese is pretty cool in and of itself. But I got to Italy and finally figured out that mozzarella is actually these white globs of just good cheesy goodness, fluffiness, and then it was like, why were Americans telling me that mozzarella was string cheese? Like, it's not string cheese. And there's many things like in America where people experience it in certain ways, but it's like simulacrums of what it actually is. Whereas you have restaurants like Felidia, you have cookbooks, you have access to information, access to the ingredients, where you can actually get those things yourselves and get like something that's truly authentic. You can even get videos from actual Italy where the people are showing you how to cook the stuff, and you go to your store, get that stuff shipped to you. So there's ways to get the kind of authenticity of this. So in your estimation, how much of the Americanization was there in this menu, or is it how much was authentic, how much was Americanized? And with Felidia herself, she was actually very interested in Lydia, she was very interested in maintaining some of that authenticity, right?
Sure. So one thing I think you probably know because you lived in Italy is that Italians typically have the pasta before the entree. So it's like, antipasta, what is it, prime, seconde, and dolce.
Mm.
So the menu is sort of structured like this, but you also do have the option of getting pasta as an entree. And that's the thing is like, as my understanding is in Italy, they typically don't do that, but they offer that because certain Americans do want pasta as an entree. Like you think of an American eating like a big bowl of spaghetti and meatballs, but it's like, in Italy, they don't do that. But I think they allowed for that flexibility because I mean, if people come in and ask for that, I mean, you just charge a little more money and give them a bigger portion. Why not? Um, I'm trying to think of like if the, I mean, I'm trying to think of like if there were really any American influences. I mean, I think they were pretty authentic. I didn't get into it in the presentation that I drew up, but he also did a bunch of he did a bunch of kosher dishes for some of the holidays like Passover, Yom Kippur, and all that. So there was like a
Okay.
brisket braised with Barolo and all this. And there are certain areas in Italy that actually have higher Jewish populations. So I guess some of those dishes sort of took off there. I got to talk to Abraham about that cookbook I bought him. Maybe they get into it in that. I'm not sure. But because of that, there were certain dishes that based on the Italian influence, but also the Jewish influence. So like Barolo they can have because well it's an Italian wine, but then brisket, but if they have kosher brisket that's fine, but they can't cook things in milk, so you don't see any pastas prepared with dairy or anything like that. But I thought like some of those touches were kind of interesting. I mean, I think he was pretty authentic. Well, he and she actually, both the chef and Lydia. I'm not sure how much American influence there really was. I think they tried to keep it pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. So yeah, definitely should talk to Aaron and see if we can come on and maybe give us like a shorter talk on the cookbook, and also just like different kind of places that you
Yeah.
consider to be like authentic Jewish
Yeah.
delis or dishes
Yeah.
all around that kind of New York City. Give us a bit of a background on that. Okay, but
Yeah.
if you're ready, I think we can jump into the dishes now.
Yep.
We talked about do a short intro, but as Steven and I want to do, once we get talking, we can just go on and on for for some time. Now, we think we'll do this in several different parts. We normally try to aim for each of these sections to be about an hour and a half. So that's kind of what we'll be aiming for. And Stephen normally does a good job of organizing these foods from like lighter fare to heavier dishes, from appetizers or primi secondi, aperitivo, primi secondi, in this kind of sense, in that order, with it ending up with the dessert. So that's what we do. And wherever you're listening to this, somewhere below there should be a listing of the menu of the items that we're talking about. So take your time. You can listen to them all at once, or you can come back and listen to things jump around and things like that. You can listen on 2 times speed. I think some of the things I normally listen to are that. So yeah. Anyway, so anything else you want to say before we get into it?
No, I think I'm all good.
Okay. So with these, he just gives me an article, a document with this, and then I read through the names of the documents. And sometimes I butcher the names, like when you're talking about seasonality, it was completely horrible with the
Yeah.
German names. But I think I'll do a lot better this one, since there'll be some
Yeah.
Italian names, but it's also like English names. So it was a restaurant that was here in the United States of America. Okay, so the first one we have here is a seafood minestra,
Mhm.
and that's lobster broth with seafood and pasta mista.
Sure. So this was on the lunch menu. This was the soup that was offered. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Lobster broth, the seafood, usually calamari, mussels. I think there might have been a little lobster in it. I'm not sure. Now, it's interesting. The pasta mista actually refers to the broken pieces of pasta that aren't supposed to be
Mhm.
served. So this was another way to use them. The idea is that the chef would actually take the hard pieces that were broken up and he would actually sort of like put them in the soup while it was cooking, but he would still maintain them to be somewhat al dente. So then they would go out to the table and you would get you can see here there's various pieces of pot, like there's rigatoni, spaghetti, like it's just sort of like a mishmash of different pastas that are broken and can't be served, but you still want to use them and they still taste good, so you make a soup out of them. Yeah.
Okay, now this is something you can tell us a bit from being there. Now, I can imagine this is kind of the thing like has happened now, where you can buy pre-torn jeans, like pre-faded jeans and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if you can buy like pre-packaged pasta mista. But since you were actually working and making your own pasta in the back, did they really just use the scraps from the different ones?
As far as I know, yeah, because like this photo here, if you look, a lot of the pieces are kind of uneven, and that's why. So again, a way to use it up, but like, so you're not throwing it out, but at the same time, I mean, people are not going to sit there and say, "Oh, this isn't even. I'm not going to eat it." But
Yeah,
the other issue too is, as I mentioned before with pasta, is that when you cook it, you want the pieces to be the same size so they cook evenly. So
yeah.
with this, it's like you do have to wing it a little bit, but it's like it's not a very precise thing. Whereas you want each piece of ravioli to be evenly thick, because if it's not, it's like this one will be underdone, this one will be over, this one will be right, and it's just not good.
Yeah, and probably also a bit of a difference here because you're also having it in a broth. And if you're having the different kind of seafood, seems to be some scallops in here, some, what else is in there? So even with
Calamari,
this, yeah, so
mussels.
even with
Yeah.
that, you're having different kind of textures and things like that. So even with the pasta itself, that's even if it has slightly different textures of denteness. Denteness isn't a term, but al dente is just meaning like it's by your teeth. There's like a feeling when you bite into it. It's not like a squish. It's not like it's this
Yeah.
foam. You're supposed to feel some. It's supposed to have some oomph to it. So I don't. It's
Yeah.
hard to explain. This is al dente. Something that your tooth feel
It,
connect with doing that.
it means to the tooth in Italian. So the idea is that like there's a little bit of a bite. Like it's not like hard still, but there's a little bit of like a starchy kind of pushback. They
Yeah.
say one of the tests to know if it's been cooked properly is that you're supposed to take like spaghetti and throw it, and if it sticks to the wall, it's al dente.
Yeah, people say
Whereas
that, but don't do that.
whereas if you cook it all the way through, it'll slide because enough of the starch bleeds out that it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that if you cook it al dente, what a lot of like what one way I was taught to cook pasta was they would par cook it in water and then shock it with ice water, but a lot of Italian chefs were saying don't do that because it erodes the starchy exterior. What you should do is you cook it briefly, pull it out, but you toss it in olive oil and lay it on a sheet tray to cool. And the idea is that the outside of the pasta is sticky, so when you heat up the pasta with sauce, the sauce will sort of adhere to the pasta. Whereas if you blanch it with ice water, it ruins that starchy exterior, so the sauce will separate.
Okay, that makes sense when
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah,
like in the pasta because I normally just yeah, that makes sense to undercook it a bit when you're not cooking it all
yeah.
the way, so it still cooks a bit in the sauce. Because the way I typically do it, I don't understand why people don't do this. It's just like yeah, you drain that stuff, and even with the starchy water, you can save that starchy water for stock and for broths and other kind of things because there's a lot
Yeah.
of goodness in that depending on how you're doing it. But I do that, and then I use butter or ghee or olive oil, yeah, to keep it so it doesn't stick together before you serve it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else you want to say about this? Were there any other kind of things where maybe they would switch out with shrimp or other things depending on what was available? Or was this the go-to seafood? Was this the three kind of seafoods that you'd use?
I think this was typically it. I don't think he really mixed it up.
Okay, so now moving on to the next dish. We have a vegetable carbonara. Now this is interesting because carbonara is a rather common dish especially in the Roman area, but it's normally with the pecorino cheese, but it's like more like a harder cheese. Like you toss it with like the eggs after it's you
Yeah.
boil the pasta and you put it like there's a little I'm forgetting the name of the meats that's normally used in it. It's kind of like a baconish
Pancetta.
type of meat, yeah,
Pancetta.
pancetta, yeah, the pancetta, and then you toss it together, and then the heat from the actual meat and the pasta kind of cooks the eggs a bit and it congeals them to the pasta. That's a carbonara I'm used to. So when I see this vegetable carbonara, I'm like, there's really no vegetables besides the pasta in my carbonara. What are you doing here? So tell us a bit about this.
Sure. So yeah. So this is essentially a deconstructed carbonara. The way the chef would do it was he would cook the vegetables. It was sometimes he would do spaghetti squash. I think that's what it was. So it's like a play on spaghetti squash, texture wise similar to spaghetti. But what he would do is instead of breaking up the egg yolk and tossing it in, he would cook the egg part way so the egg yolk was still running and put that on top. So if you notice in the
Okay.
picture here, it's the egg yolk with a little bit of the white surrounding just to hold it together, and then the pancetta would get sprinkled over top as well as the cheese would be grated on top, and then black pepper would be crushed table side if that's what people wanted, because typically that's what it is. It's the
Yeah.
pasta with the pancetta, egg yolk, and black pepper, but the black pepper is optional. Not everyone wants that. I mean, personally, I like black pepper on red meat. I think it's a little overwhelming on other stuff, but it's what people want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you get the fresh grated peppercorns, that
Yep.
gets really some real oomph in there. Like there's
Yeah.
the pepper spray is actually made from peppers. Like it's
Yeah.
actually in there. It's
Yeah.
something about that. But yeah, this is interesting. Was this the kind of dish you've seen before? Was these kind of deconstructed type of things? Now that's where the chef kind of gets to flex their muscles, flex their creative muscles a bit more, right? Where you hardly see the same things deconstructed in similar ways in other places, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the deconstructed thing going around for quite some time. But I guess this was just sort of his take on carbonara because it's like you go to a lot of cheaper Italian places, everybody does it the traditional way. It's kind of boring, so this was just like a more creative take on it. Um, I'm not sure like what specifically inspired him to do this dish, but I thought it was kind of cool. Uh.
Yeah, in the ones where we're actually talking about places that are open, we normally include more of just like a bit of a discussion on the cost and the prices of things. But here, since it's kind of closed, we're probably not going to mention that much in towards that. But yeah. So what other kind of veg you think you can switch around with this? Because it's also that's that whole thing where some people who are doing like a low carb keto type of diet, they use like the zucchini noodles. Or even if you're not doing them, you can make these on yourself just for like a different taste, or like spaghetti squash and things like that. So I think that'll be something to keep in mind. Which of these dishes do we think you can kind of switch out with like veggie-based noodles instead of the typical pasta wheat noodles?
I mean, you could maybe do. I'm trying to remember exactly what he did, but the vegetables change by season. So of course, fall he did the spaghetti squash, but then here I think it was like shredded. I'm trying to think if it was kale or something, but it was something that you
Okay.
can cut into thin strips so it looks more like a pasta almost. Um, Springtime, of course, different green vegetables. Trying to remember what he did in the winter. Doesn't come to memory.
Yeah, it could be something. Cabbage. Cabbage means cabbage whenever.
But I mean, you can
Cabbage is
basically
the all
if
time.
you can take it, and you can cut it thin like that. I mean, it works. Yeah.
Yeah. You're looking for a different certain kind of mouthfeel and look on the table. So it's a mouthfeel like different depending on the veg,
Yeah.
but the shape of the thing could be the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So on to the next one.
Sure.
Here we have the tuna carpaccio with avocado and kaluga caviar.
Sure. So I don't have a whole lot to say on this dish. I thought it looked kind of nice. I'm trying to remember what the sauce is made out of, but carpaccio, for those who don't know, it's tartare is cut up into very small pieces. Carpaccio, it's usually pounded out flat, usually done with either tuna or beef. It's with some avocado here, the Kaluga caviar. I'm trying to remember what was in the liquid. I wish I had, but I thought it looked nice, and I think I did try this dish at one point, and I enjoyed it, so thought it was kind of cool.
It's a bit like that boba tea type of thing. I've
Yeah.
never had boba tea, but it's just the whole like white things
Ah,
in the whole like black things in the whiteness kind of looks like that. Yeah,
yeah.
carpaccio is it's a common thing that's eaten. There's a lot of different ones. There's certain
Yeah.
things, certain preparation styles that you'll find across different regions in Italy. But what will change will be the type of meat or the type of vegetable that will be prepared in that means. And carpaccio is one that I've seen is it's a common thing. You can imagine back in the time, it's like, yeah, it's just get some fresh, nice fruit, nice meat, and just pound it down, and you can carry it. It's a quick kind of bite to eat. Doesn't take too much fuss and things like that. I think people can see why this was something that was relatively common. And with this one, again, it's the quality of the ingredients. If you get low quality meat and do this, it's going to taste like a low quality dish. But you get some nice fresh meat, well raised, well fed, well cared for, and you're going to have a good tasting dish.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, so
Um,
yeah, he's thinking the sinewy nature of the meat and the avocado butteriness, and then do these the caviar? I'm trying to feel the seeds. The little eggs kind of have a poppy type of thing when you do they pop or do
yeah.
they just melt? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a crunch, and they're also kind of salty. So it's like it's one of these things where a dish like this, you probably wouldn't put too much salt on the fish itself because if you eat the caviar with that, you're gonna get the brininess. So that's why if you notice if you do like a caviar plate, you'll do it with like riced egg yolk or onion or something because the idea is it's sort of like it's something to sort of complement the brininess, not like if you paired it with something salty, it would just be too much. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it. Nice looking dish.
Yep.
And then next one,
Yeah.
jumping out the document here with these colors. It's
Yeah.
Lydia's penne, which is
Yep.
gran biscotto ham, and peas and creamy tomato sauce.
Sure. So this was actually it's Lydia's penne. This was actually the penne that she makes. She has her own pasta line. If you go to Italy, you can actually buy it there, and we use it in the restaurant. So this is a dried pasta, so it'll be cooked al dente. It's not a fresh pasta. Gran biscotto ham. It's a type of ham cut into pieces. The tomato sauce, creamy tomato. So you figure it's a red sauce. Well, it's a rosa sauce they call it, where it's like a tomato sauce, but you add a little bit of cream to like give it another bit of flavor. The flavor changes a bit, and then just some peas to finish, thrown in at the end, fresh peas. This was on, I want to say, for lunch, and I think this was on the restaurant week menu as well. This is one of lunch. I would say lunch menu was a little more casual and rustic, whereas dinner was a little more refined. So this was like a, I don't want to say cheaper dish, but this is more like, like this is something you'd get on the prefix for lunch, pay a bit less money, whereas dinner you would get more sophisticated stuff that you'd spend a little more money on. Yeah.
How would they get to this orangish color though? Is they using orange or tomato? So because like we were talking about this in one of the previous ones about the different kind of like beetroots. It was the one we had about cheese. What about the yeah? Like the last talk about Castelluto talked about different cheeses, and then recently we just purchased some. It was some blood oranges, and then we also got some of those yellow oranges that we talked about. Not oranges, blood tomatoes, and then yellow tomatoes that we talked about when we talked about I think it was the Gabriel Cruther one, where we talked about the
yellow tomato
gel.
gazpacho.
Yeah, so we got some of those tiny little yellow tomatoes, and then also the blood tomatoes that are just like deep red. It's almost black. Like it's really cool. Like it's a slightly different taste in that. So how did they get this kind of orangish color it looks like turmeric or saffron or something in there to get this orange?
I think it was just the type of tomatoes, as far as I remember, because it would it might be like slightly darker, and then the cream lightens it a little. But it might have been a combination of like red and yellow tomatoes, so it's like more orangey. And then you add a little bit of the cream, which lightens the color further. I think I'd have to check. The recipe may be in the book. I'd have to see, but I think that's what they did. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's the difference with dry and wet pasta and fresh pasta? Like, why are some prefer to be cooked dry and some are prefer to be cooked fresh, where it's just get them out of the machine or even store?
Well, the point of dry pasta, as you can imagine, was it was made so it can last. So the idea is you can make a ton of it, put it in boxes, and you'll have it whenever you need it. But the thing is with the dried pasta is that you typically serve it al dente. So if you were working a line in a restaurant, you would cook it to al dente. And then it's basically cooked most of the way through. Then when it comes time to pick it up, you heat it up with the sauce. So it's, it's hot, but it's not, it still is somewhat has a little bit of a bite in the middle. But fresh pasta, you make either day to day or close to it, and the idea is that you have to use it up like pretty soon because it's fresh. It's not going to last over time, but because it's very soft already, you drop it in the water and pull it out. Basically, it's done already. But fresh pasta is going to be a different texture. It's going to be softer because it never hardens the way dry pasta does. So that leads to different pairings and just a different product.
Yeah, because now thinking, I just made some pasta last night. I might put a picture of what I made with it. Just like some pasta and some meat, some minced meat sauce, and some what's it called? And just some stir fry veg. But with the pastas, like pasta is normally relatively quick, given the dried ones. So you're saying like the dry ones actually cook faster than
No. The fresh ones cook faster. What I'm saying is that but the fresh ones, the way it is that you have to you make them and you use them like that day because they don't last over time. Yeah. So it's like, but the fresh ones, it's like ravioli is a fresh pasta, but it's like they make that and then you just drop it in the water, pull it out, put it in sauce, serve it, it's done. Whereas with the dry pasta, you cook it to al dente, you put it on the side, and then when it comes time to heat it up, you cook it, you finish it. Yeah,
that's what you mean. Okay. Yeah. So even in a restaurant like Felidia, even if you're working with some dry pastas, you'll have a certain amount of it already cooked to al dente. So when somebody orders, it's a lot quicker to actually get started. You're not spending the 8 to 10 minutes to cook from fresh every time. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That makes sense. All right. Anything else you want to say about this creamy goodness? Was there any other switching out with instead of peas, putting something else in there, maybe some garbanzo beans or something else, or no, was it just peas?
I think it was just peas, but that's all I remember. I mean, maybe in the past they did other stuff, but I just remember the peas. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Now the next one is paccheri with bolognese and peas.
Sure. So paccheri, you can tell it's this shorter, fatter pasta. The rigatoni is a little bit longer and thinner. This is probably, I think it was about the length of rigatoni, if you can visualize that, but a bit wider. So you would serve fewer pieces of it. Bolognese, this was a traditional bolognese, which a lot of Americans misuse bolognese just to refer to tomato sauce in general, but it's a specific preparation where it's veal, pork, and beef, and it's cut up very fine, usually with carrots and other vegetables, and it's cooked with like a little bit of butter to finish, and there's like a touch of tomato just to finish, but not very much of it. Because the problem is, what a lot of people call bolognese is just meat sauce, basically, where they just
Yeah.
like, yeah, they just use it. Whereas like the idea is that it's supposed to be mostly meat, butter, and like a little bit of tomato to finish. So this is authentic bolognese with some peas to finish as well. You can also see the carrots in
Hmm.
the sauce as well. And then this was also a dried pasta, so this is another one that's al dente and there's a bit of a chew in the center. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those common Italian dishes that people will have in America, and then like, oh, we know what this is, and then we'll get to Italy, or they'll go to an more authentic Italian place. They're like, oh, what is this? It's like, nope, you're the ones guys
Yeah.
wrong. Wrong, you're wrong. Like with the whole pizza thing, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop your nonsense. Not all pizza has to have cheese on it, even though cheese is a maze boss. It's yeah. So with this one again, is there any other switches out? Like you said, the peas is part of the bolognese of the traditional or authentic one.
um Well, no, I don't think peas are traditionally in bolognese, but I think bolognese, it is those meats. It's usually at least beef. I think she did with the three meats, the pork, veal, and beef. But the idea, like I said, it's mostly butter, carrots, and then like I think there's like a touch of tomato paste to like give it a little bit of color and thicken it up, but it's not like dominant, like predominantly tomato.
Oh yeah, and Bologna is in Emilia Romagna, which is it's like northern Italy. So is it Piemonte also? Let me check. No, Emilia Romagna is a different, but it's closer to Piemonte. It's northern Italy, so
Yeah.
it's in the
Emil
region.
Emilia Romagna, I want to say, is more like north central, than Piemonte is more like north west.
Yeah, Piemonte is more towards France. Like I remember when I was up,
Yeah.
that's where I was in Turin, and that's
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's Turin, and then the Swiss Alps are also up there. Like I could actually see the Alps from the balcony of my apartment, and then there's a lot of French speaking there. For some reason, it's like the chocolate capital of the world. I don't know. Like the first chocolate was developed or invented there or created there or something. But Turin's a magnificent place. I haven't been to Bologna though.
Hmm.
I think no, I haven't been to Bologna. But yeah, okay. So I think we can move on to the next one unless you got anything
Sure.
else to say about this dish.
No.
It's going through these a bit faster than I thought, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Um, Now, the next one is Mama's lasagna. Now, tell us a bit about this because lasagna is one of the very, very. It's definitely something that I think from Italian food is.
Yeah.
I think after pizza, there's really nothing. Okay, pizza and then pasta in general, but this is one of the most shipped out one. But I guess the general technique of it, in my estimation, if I'm not correct, it's some kind of pasta-ish type of layer of it. Pasta, not something that is pasta or matches pasta, then a sauce layer of it, and then a meat carbohydrate type of layer of it. And that has to happen at least again with a covering of something for it to be considered lasagna. Like if you just have one single layer, it's not really. It's more like closer to like a really flat pizza
Yeah.
than anything. But so isn't that tell us a bit about lasagna as a typical idea of what lasagna is, and specifically this Mama's lasagna.
Sure. So it's interesting here. So lasagna with ending in the A here, that's actually the singular form of it. The plural is actually it ends with GNE, whereas so it's
Mhm.
kind of, I guess, a bastardization. It's actually, it refers to the shape of the pasta itself. It's actually from Campania, where some of my family came from. I think that's kind of cool. So it's basically, it's just the pasta, and then of course like what goes with it. I mean, typically it's like a ragu, the meat sauce, but you can do vegetables, you can do different cheeses, ricotta, mozzarella, all this. I think I told this story in a previous video, but I can rehash it here for those who don't know. I was sick of lasagna for a while because when my mother was pregnant with my youngest brother, all these people brought us lasagna to eat because they saw it as, oh, your mother shouldn't have to cook, so we'll give her food to we'll give you guys food so she doesn't have to cook. But the thing is, like, everybody gave us lasagna and ziti. So I remember eating it for like a month or two after my brother was born. And after that, I was just like so fed up with lasagna for a long time. And we also didn't have a microwave. So I remember my dad reheating it in the oven. It would dry out and he would expect me to eat it because he's like, we can't. So I was just like, all right, I can't have lasagna for years later. But this place got me back into lasagna because this was on the Sunday menu. On the Sunday menu, you could do a family style menu. So what you did was they would send you there were a few appetizers, like it was, they would send you a few, I'm trying to remember if it was like 3 or 4 appetizers, like kind of like a family style. So there was like a bunch of it sits in the middle, and then like 2 pasta courses. There was lasagna and something else, and then there was like a meat and a fish course, and then there's like a dessert at the end. So it was a lot cheaper than the regular menu too. I wish I could remember the prices, but this was a Sunday menu, and the idea was it was pushed on Sunday because Sundays were typically quieter, so it was sort of like a way to get people to come in. And it was a pretty good deal. I mean, you got a few appetizers, the pasta, the entree, all this. So it's like, you get a good amount of food. And sometimes when the lasagna, what they didn't serve was left over in the back, so we would just eat it in the back after. It was really nice.
It's a family meal type thing that they have at the restaurant.
Yeah, well, we had family meal before service, but also at the end of the night, there were certain things that the kitchen couldn't serve again. So like lasagna they made each week, but only for Sunday. But if they didn't sell all of it, it would get thrown out or whatever. So they would just like put it in the back for us to eat. So I used to snack on this. And her lasagna she made with rosa sauce, by the way. So it was meat based, but there was a bit of cream in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because we just started at the start of this. We're talking about the different kinds of pastics, with how it's all plural. But yeah, when people normally see lasagna, that could be something in the West. Now I'm trying to remember in Italy, did I see lasagna with a E? Like when I was seeing it listed in places, I'm not quite sure. It probably was. And the point that you make, lasagna is the actual noodles themselves. Those flat noodles is what they're referring to it. But then it's the typical non-pasta based ones, like the zucchini ones. You make them with zucchini. You can make them. What are the other ones? Other kind of layers. Eggplants. You can use that. So there's just other kind of things you can use for the layering that I know people make different kind of versions of, like vegetarian, all vegetarian versions. Some people prefer the salsa rosa. Some people prefer. Well, the salsa rosa is also now a rather salsa rosso, which is a different kind of thing, which is more like mayonnaise and ketchup type of mix that they do in some places in the Roman area. But then there's salsa rosa, which is you talk about here, but then people also use the white sauce. Anyway, so also good idea with this one, making the lasagna into small dishes, because I really like lasagna, but then the amount of effort it takes to layer the things, make the different kind of components of it, to put it, it's like making a personal size one. It's kind of like the amount of energy. Let's say you're spending 100 units of energy to make a personal size one. To make one for like 10 people, you need to add like 10 units of energy maybe to like do it. So it kind of makes more sense to do that. But as Stephen mentioned and learned through his childhood, you can also store it for a long time and just eat for a constant amount of time. But yeah.
Well, also too, like I say, for the family style menu, like you're not just eating this, you're eating all this other stuff. So they're not going to give you a huge portion because you'll be too full. So it's like you get like a few bites of lasagna, a few bites of another pasta, a few bites of meat, a few bites of fish. But like overall, you'll have a pretty big meal.
But in the back, were they stored in these kind of single serve dishes and then put in the oven, or how did that work? Because you said they cooked them, so it's kind of, were they sitting in the oven where they'd say, okay, on the weekend we think we'll serve maybe 20 of these, so we're going to prepare because of course these take, people listening, these take a little more time. It's not like just pasta, throwing it into the water and having it be ready in like 5 minutes. That's not what you can do in lasagna. So did they say like, we're assuming we'll have maybe 20 today, and then we start preparing 20 and we put them in the oven and they're kind of sitting there waiting, and at the end of the day if people don't get them, then you guys have them?
Yeah, so the way it worked, I think, was they made them in these big hotel pans, and then what they did was they cut those into cubes and put each cube into one of these containers. Okay. So they would fire that off and then be like, okay, this table's getting one. If it was a big party, they'd get 2 or 3 of those, and then whatever's left over, they would just heat up at the end for all of us, and we could just scoop into it and eat it. So, yeah.
And I think this kind of plate. Now this looks a bit like there was. I forget which one we talked about, where there was some kind of like white asparagus that was served in some kind of thing that this kind of grayish dish is reminding me of that. So I forget which one, some time back. Okay,
that was from seasonal, the one with the potatoes and the hollandaise. Yeah, it's a similar looking material. I'm not sure if it's the same though. Yeah.
Okay, now with this, did she switch out the ingredients at all, or was this what she's been serving for probably the 40 years that she was there? Has anything changed with this?
As far as I know, it's been the same. I think the recipe is in the book too. I mean, like I've said with many dishes here, I mean, if you wanted to swap out little things, maybe you could, like maybe throw in a vegetable or something. But as far as I know, this is how she's been doing it. So.
Good stuff, lasagna. So yeah, I mean, y'all tell us in the comment section what's the best lasagna you've made personally. What's the best lasagna you've had somewhere, and what are the different kind of takes lasagna. There's probably a lot of dessert lasagnas you can probably make. It's tiramisu in a way is kind of a dessert lasagna equivalent. Anyway, so moving on to the next dish if you're ready.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, this is a cacio e pere. That's the one you're saying is different. So instead of cacio pepe, it's cacio e pere.
Yep.
So yeah, this is the most popular dish, most popular pasta at Felidia, having been on the menu for over 15 years. So tell us a bit about this.
Sure. So this is, you can probably tell, there's the dish cacio and pepe, which means cheese and pepper, and there's also pecorino e pere, which is I have to look up what it is, but it's I know it's like pecorino cheese with pear. So this is kind of like a cross play between those. So the ravioli here, it's stuffed with pecorino cheese, grated pear, mascarpone, and then the sauce is actually made from pear juice, from the filling that sort of runs off, as well as butter. So you pick it up. There's when they pick it up, it's sort of like after the pasta's cooked, it's sort of picked up in the pear juice. You add a little bit of butter to finish, and then table side, they would run this pan out with the pasta in it, and what you would do is you'd heat it up. We had burners on the side, so some things we would heat up on the side, and you would lay it out in the pan, and then finish with more pecorino and black pepper on top. This pasta is excellent. I used to snack on it all the time. It's still on the menu. It's still on the menu at Babbo, by the way. This is one of the dishes that Chef Fortunato brought over. So if you want to go to Babbo and get it, I highly recommend it. I mean, I won't order it because I've eaten a lot of it, but I highly recommend it. When my parents came in, I think I sent you the photo. They were actually going to go celebrate their anniversary somewhere else, but they were going to like go to a show or something, but they came in and just to visit, and like my boss hooked them up completely. Like he sent them like pasta, antipasta, like champagne, all this stuff. I was like, wow, that's very generous of you. And he sent them this pasta as well. And yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend it. It's lacto-ovo vegetarian friendly, no meat. Of course, it's not vegan. I don't really think you could do it vegan unless you did a vegan cheese, but you know, great dish. Highly recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks amazeballs, and it's definitely something you can also just have warm, or you can have cool, because it looks like you can just kind of keep it. And I mean, you still want to have some freshness with it, but I can see it just something that you could just this is like in the snack, just like keep walking by, grabbing a piece. Like it looks great.
This recipe is in the cookbook too, by the way. So I mean, ravioli, it takes a bit of finesse to get good at, but I mean, if you want to try and recreate it, you could. Or I mean, you know, even use the filling for other things. I mean, you know, the flavor pairings are great.
That's what I was thinking. With that filling, there's different kind of things you can switch around. Once you know what ravioli is, the general kind of flavors and textures and idea of what the dish is, now you can start understanding, like, this person's, okay, we can switch pear out. Like, do you know why they thought of the pear? Like, you said you didn't, not quite sure, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it was just, again, it was a play on these dishes, but I think she just thought that pear, butter, and pecorino and black pepper all went well together. And I mean, the flavor clearly works because this is one of those things. That they tried to take off the menu, and I guess there was an uproar, so they kept it on. Yeah. So you know, I mean, it's like, you know, if it sells, keep it. I mean, why take it off? And then I guess Babbo, I remember talking to the staff at Babbo, and they're like, yeah, we like this too. It's very popular here as well. So, you know, I was like, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
And this is a typical dish it was served in?
Yeah. So it was typically. You could either get an appetizer or an entree portion. I want to say the appetizer was like 4 pieces. The entree was like 8 or something. Some people got it as entree. It's typically appetizer because it's like, I don't know, pasta as an entree is not as exciting. But I mean, there were vegetarians who would come in and get, you know, a bigger portion.
Yeah, because it looks like a family size. If anything, it's like a lot of ravioli in there.
Yeah. Well, I think this may have been on the family style menu too. I'm trying to remember because it was lasagna and another pasta. I think this may have been it because it was a popular item. So it's like family style. You might get like 12 pieces or whatever. Then each person sitting at a table gets like 2, 3, 4. You know.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you said she was moving. Do you know which? If you know the ones that were in there for the longest time in there, be letting us know also as we're going through this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, bianconeri. Bianconeri, if I'm not mistaken, no, I'm trying to think if that was also the nickname for the Roman team. I know no, it wasn't. No, Bianconeri was a nickname for, of course, Juventus, because they had the black and white kit. So yeah, Bianconeri is black and white, so meaning black and white. This is inspired by the colors of the chefs. Oh, wait, okay, of course.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
It was inspired by the chef's favorite team, which is Juventus. So tell us a bit about this.
Yeah, so this is actually it's interesting because it's his favorite team, but it's also a very Sicilian dish. So the way they did it was they took a sheet of squid ink pasta, which was black, a sheet, and they layered it on top of a white sheet and cut it out. So if you look at the individual pasta pieces are half black, half white. It's called chitarra pasta. Chitarra is like not spaghetti exactly, but kind of in that like category, I guess. And it was served with the trapanese pesto. For those who don't know, the Genovese pesto is from the north, from Genoa, and that's the basil, pine nuts, garlic, olive oil. The trapanese pesto is peppers, almonds, olive oil. I want to say, I think that's about it. It's a little spicier though. So that and sautéed calamari, and then more more almonds and toasted breadcrumbs served on top. This was another dish that was on the menu a while. I'm not sure how long, but it was very popular, and it looked great on the plate.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
pretty good.
Let me see if this
Wow.
is let me see if this is in the cookbook. I think it would be, but I'm not. I didn't check.
I'm definitely a super big fan of calamari and just like many different ways that it can be prepared. And it's a common one. Italy, for those of y'all who don't know, it's most of the country is. I think besides the island countries, I guess also Spain is one of the ones that's a lot. It's one of the it's one of those countries. I think Italy, then probably Spain. I'm trying to think what other countries would come into this where like it has so much of the country itself is actually coastline. So depends on where there's a lot of seafood in a lot of Italian dishes. It's like when you go to like the Sicily area, it's an island. So Sicilia is an island. So that's of course going to have a lot of that. But the rest of Italy as well, there's always access to rivers or sea and things like that. So there's a lot of seafood in Italian dishes. Yeah. So is it in there? You found it?
Well, so it's interesting. I'm finding a recipe for the Trapanese pesto, and then I'm finding I have a Kitara recipe too, but I don't see the black and white pasta itself. I don't know. I don't.
Well,
Yeah.
it's something that I think you could kind of put together if you
Yeah.
have the component parts of it. Should be able to throw the actual thing together and make it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Kitara, it's like, yeah, if you take the sheets and then like put them together, then cut them,
Yeah.
and then it like you could even do like a spinach and like beet pasta. You could do like a green and like reddish one. You could do like you could do like I'm trying to think like what other colors you could do like you could do a tomato pasta that's more reddish. Like you could just take the different sheets, like flavor them with different things, and do like a red and white, do like a black and white, do like green and black. But there's a lot of cool stuff I think you could do with the general idea. Yeah.
Yeah. The guitar pasta is running a bit thicker than the ones, but yeah, it's thicker and actually has a hole in the middle. And some of them, no, it doesn't have. It's solid. Which is the one that has the hole in the middle? It's like a
Um.
cylinder, like you know, probably a few, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would have to see what because I was gonna say I feel like you could be describing a few different.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, I might try to see if I can go back to this. I'm going to take some pictures and see if I can post some of the ones. But the guitar, as Stephen had mentioned, when I'm looking just a quick image search for it, there's a lot of pasta. I mean, a lot of regular spaghetti coming up, like spaghetti alla chitarra, or like spaghetti alla chitarra seems to be a common thing. Yeah, all right. So, anything else you have to say about this? Was his favorite? So this is probably something that he kept with this, and he didn't really do too much like on switching things around. Like it was supposed to be what it is, right?
yeah, I mean it was one of those things that was on the menu the whole time I was there, but I mean I'm sure it was way before then too because I mean I only worked there what maybe trying to think if I was there 2 years or something, but I'm sure it's probably something they've been running for years now. So it's like it's sort of like it's not quite as popular as the last one, but it's popular enough they're going to keep it around. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So the next one, this is rather interesting. Really have been interesting, but yeah, here we go to some nettle gnocchi with clams and romps and guanciale.
So this dish I didn't actually get to try, but I saw it in their photos and I thought it was beautiful, so I reposted it. My favorite
Yeah.
color is green, for those who don't know, so I thought it looked awesome. Gnocchi, for those who don't know, gnocco means knuckle in Italian. And so basically, I think because the way you press it down, like with I think originally they use your fist, so it's supposed to be like with your knuckle. Nettles, for those who don't know, it's actually the thistle family. They're not spiky like thistles you find in your yard, but they do have these little like rough, like I'm not gonna say spikes, but like they do have kind of a coarse like outside. but when you cook them
Yeah.
down, they kind of soften. So I guess this was actually made into the dough. And then ramps, for those who don't know, those are big in springtime. It's a cross between leek and garlic. It's really nice, very popular. Clams, it's obvious. Guanciale is the cured pork jowl, so that was cut into pieces, and it looked like it was crisped up and just served over top, or maybe the pasta was heated up in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a unique type of dish. You get this, it's something you are going to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to try it because it wasn't on the menu when I was there, but I thought it looked amazing. So it's like, I have
Yeah.
to copy this.
Do
Yeah,
they
I
do
told
any
my
other? Go
well,
ahead.
I told my old boss too from Patello, the Italian American guy, and I was like, this seems like right up your alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have any other kind of gnocchi that would have different colors, or any kind of pastas that they include other things? We've talked about this in several of the ones, several ones this season now and things like that. Now, there was that. It was in the Valentine's Day one where they used beet and made some red kind of what was
Yeah,
it? Was
that's
it red pasta, red cheese or something like that, where they infused it with the cheese or something like that? So did they do that at all with any other pastas at Felidia during your time
you're
there?
refer you're referring to the one at seasonal, right? It
Yeah.
was red cabbage. Yeah, yeah. There's actually one coming up that they did for Valentine's Day. I think you'll really appreciate it. That should be
Cool.
one of the upcoming. Yeah.
Okay. So as you're saying that, I think we can get this off the screen and look at it for some more. Screen with
Ah,
this jumping off those clams, just nice and open and heavily with some looking like some butter on it. What was the butter that they're cooked in? Yeah, what's the typical? Of course, olive oil is meant to be a common one, but do they use ghee or butter? What's the typical other fats that they use to cook in Italian cooking?
typically butter. Yeah, I noticed you bring up ghee a lot. My understanding is ghee is big in Indian cooking and some of the Middle East. I think for this they typically use whole butter, but it depends, I think, on the dish and also the region. I know historically in the South it was known more for tomatoes. The North it was more butter and other things. But over time, of course, that's crossed over because I mean, it's like there's no reason that it has to stay in that area. But I think I'd imagine probably around Rome and in the north, there's probably more butter stuff. In the south, there's probably more tomato and other things. Again, I'm not. I mean, if somebody knows better than me, I'm willing to hear it. But I think that's how it generally went. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, here we go. You've mentioned these before. You mentioned these in the different one we were talking about, and we posted an actual image of it because I remember this picture. I forget it was. I think it was like even like way back in like Minetta talk or something. You'd mentioned something with this, but here we go. So the next one here is cappellacci and rosa,
Yep.
which
There we
is
go.
stuffed with duck and foie gras, yeah, the foie, and coated with porcini broth. And for those of y'all who don't know, Stephen is human foie gras because he consumes foie gras in all sorts of forms and all sorts of ways. And we just actually earlier on today we're talking to our friend Mark that we had a I know great people talking. He gave us an update on he's trying to do some more humanely raised foie gras with geese and ducks, and just giving some update on that. So we'll definitely have Mark back on or to update with him about that. But yeah, tell us about this dish. Yeah.
Um, so this is another dish like the previous one that I didn't get to actually try, unfortunately. But I think I was perusing their page and I saw this. I was like, wow, damn, I missed Valentine's Day. But cappellacci, you can tell it's a type of ravioli. It's colored with I want to say beets. That's how it has the pinkish color, and they're actually shaped into hearts, which I thought was a nice gesture. Inside duck and foie. I don't know. My guess is duck. It's probably like confit or something because it's shredded, so that way it's like like you put like braised meat and ravioli or something typically. Porcini broth. My guess is they probably simmer the porcinis and they finish it with butter. That's what you see in the plate.
So delicious.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could have tried this, but
Man,
yeah. No,
is
because
it
I
in the
remember
cookbook?
that's actually a good question. I should look this up because you'll notice too. This is the only foie gras dish in here, but I mean, it is an Italian, not a French place, so it's
Yeah.
like occasionally they'll use foie and like other things, but it's not like I mean, the French and Italian borrow from each other, but like this is supposed to be more authentic, so like they're not really gonna,
Yeah, foie is not a typical Italian one. So,
yeah,
so foie, yeah, it's also called foie gras, which is a French name. So that's
yeah.
mostly it's the most common in French food, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because well, I mean, traditionally there's debate about where did it start. Like, if like did it start in Egypt? Did the Jews who are migrating do it? The Romans had some understanding of it, and then it became big in France. So it's like of course, the name is obviously French. Everyone else, like, I mean, seasonal we had it too, and I mean that's an Austrian place, but it's like everyone kind of
yeah,
borrows from everyone anyway. So yeah.
yeah.
I'm not seeing the recipe in here. Yeah, I don't think so because I'm looking at fresh pastas. No, it's not here, unfortunately. I mean, I'm sure you could figure it out. I mean,
Yeah.
you could probably pieces of foie gras and duck confit, and then the pasta you just have to get beet juice and stain the beet so it's that flavor, that shape, and then I'm trying to think how you would do it with the heart shaped mold. I guess do if you had like a heart ring mold and maybe like put the pieces together and stamp it out or something. Yeah. Not 100.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe put a little bit. You maybe put a little bit in the center, and then you have the two pieces, and you stamp them together, and then when you cook it, it like puffs up a little. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, because
Uh,
you just have the extra on the side. You use like maybe square
yeah,
pieces when you're doing it. Yeah, I'm just also thinking this. Oh man, this. But the porcini broth, I just want to have like little shot glasses of it. It's like well, not even
uh,
shot glasses, but so there's little the small like cappuccino glass like cups and just like kind of sip it. Like that'd be amazing. But yeah, this looks
yeah.
great.
I love mushroom. Anything is good by me. So
Yeah, and it's a typical thing that you'd expect. A lot of restaurants will have this series that we've been doing. Often we get to when we're focusing on one restaurant in specific, we'll often show like the different specials they'll have on Valentine's Day because those are some of the big days as you'd expect to get people into restaurants who book ahead of time. So it's kind of good to show something up, give people a good memory so they can probably come back or to award the people who are in there. And now we're going to go to another one. Went to many different colors here. I guess the
yeah,
first one you had the green and then the red, so you have some Italian flag type of action there. But now here
yep.
you've got a bit of some yellow, which is some ravioli with lobster and corn, burrata, and local butter. And yeah, the burrata is like it's like Pokemon version. If like a basic string cheese is like the first Pokemon starter Pokemon you get, the upgraded version is like the Charmander. Let's say it's like a Charizard, and then the
Charizard is
Charmander.
it's Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard.
Okay,
Yeah,
so like Charmander is the string cheese, then Charmeleon
Charm.
is the regular burrata, and then Charizard. No, Charmeleon is the regular, just like mozzarella, the ball. Then the Charizard version is the burrata, which is like it's the ball of mozzarella with like strips of mozzarella and fresh curd inside. It's to die for. It's amazing balls. If you see it anywhere that you're at a place where you have even an inkling that it's an authentic kind of Italian place, or you can find some place online to order it, try some burrata before you die, and it's amazing. Yeah, go ahead, tell us about this dish.
So this dish was on the menu while I was there, so I did get to try it. This was you could probably tell it's a summer item, all summer ingredients. The burrata was inside the ravioli itself, and then the lobster was in the pan
Wow.
the lobster was in the pan when it was picked up with corn and tomatoes. Again, very summery. A little bit of basil on top. You can see there's red and yellow tomatoes here. This dish just screams summer. I mean, lobster, corn, tomatoes. A little fresh basil. This was great. Yeah, I got to try this. Yeah, this is another one I would snack on if there was extra.
Yeah, wow. That's again with this one as we mentioned. Once you know ravioli, so whether it's in the cookbook or not, you can kind of figure out how to go
Yeah,
inside and just switch these things out. And this is just it just shows how with a lot of these dishes, like once you know the basics of how to make something, there's so many different things you can play around
yeah,
with. And this is something that people need to understand. Like I see these people who are like, oh, I'm a homeowner, or I've gotten this space, I've gotten this, and then you see these magnificent kitchens, and they just don't do anything. Like our mutual friend Rocco, he just finally got a place in Bermuda, and he just sent me some photos the other day of him setting up his kitchen. Now he's getting into cooking more, and that's like really great to see that. There's really so much I think that's being lost in life just from being able to understand the food you consume and be aware and part of the whole preparation of it. And you see the popularity of the Food Network and food shows. People are interested in it, but then there seems to be a very big, I don't know what it is. There seems to be some sort of wall that is keeping people from going out there and making that time and taking that extra step to just kind of learn how to make certain things. Yeah.
yeah. Um, not a whole else lot to say. I mean, I really enjoyed it, of course. I mean, you could, I don't think it'd be too hard to figure out. I mean, again, a little bit of finesse with the ravioli itself, but it's not, it wouldn't be too hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking of this. What else is saying here? So yeah, the strips kind of strips of lobster meat kind of put out here. The cut kind of cherry tomatoes. Yeah, it looks amazing. Just seeing the plate and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
and then like I say before too, I mean, you can do this. You could swap out other things. Like you could do it with shrimp, maybe. You could do it with crab. I mean, you could maybe do, heirloom tomatoes. You could maybe do put other vegetables in. I mean, you could maybe like even do a fall version, do like pieces of squash. I mean, who knows? Yep.
Now, on something like this, was there on the menu, is the kind of thing where like there was normally like one or two ravioli dishes at all times. So it's like these kind of things rotated around depending on what season you are in there.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what we've been saying about dessert, how you have the four C's: caramel, chocolate, citrus, and coffee. It's a similar thing with pastas. Like you have like usually like two raviolis. There's usually like two long pastas. There's usually like a few shorter, more squat pastas. It just so that way it's like the odds are if you like pasta, you'll like at least one of those. So then they just they would it's sort of like you have all your bases covered. So the odds are you'll at least please almost everybody.
All right, good.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
these are pleasing looking dishes. I think
yeah,
y'all can agree that they
yeah.
really do jump off of the plate. Now here we go with another one. We've gone to some really amazing things. Like people will be like, "Oh, they talk about different things." I'm like, "No." Rather than this one, which is the next dish that we're talking about here, which got some truffles in it. Rather than truffles, try the burrata first over the truffles. But anyway, I'm biased on that sense, just from liking cheese and also truffle. Smell of truffles giving me a headache. But this one is tajarin with summer truffle,
Yeah.
and it's also available different ones. Now I'm wondering this name. I don't think the letter J is in the Italian language. So what's this name coming from?
This is from the you can tell it's similar to spaghetti. This is from the north, from Piemonte. This is actually the original name for this is taglione, but tagerine is actually the Piemontese name for it. So I'm wondering
Okay.
if that's like a regional dialect. Like when we talked about seasonal, it's the same thing. Like the Germans have certain names for food, and then Austrians will have like their own dialect name. So I think it's kind of a similar thing there. Um, so it's similar. It's also, like I say, it's also called spaghettoni. So it's like you can tell it's spaghetti shaped. This was actually picked up in butter, and there was also a bit of the truffle paste that you can buy. So it tastes like that, and then the fresh truffles are grated over top. Um, the summer truffles are the cheapest ones. I do not recommend them. Like summer truffles, they'll grate a ton. They'll grate a ton because they barely taste like anything. The white are super expensive. Like the white are $2,000 to $3,000 a pound. So we have those in winter. I sent you some photos, Silas. I actually took a picture with the biggest truffle I ever had because I was a manager. I got to grade them. I had a truffle like. I'm not a huge guy. I mean, I'm 5'9", but the truffle took up most of my hand, and I'm like, I've never seen a truffle this big. I'm like, how much does this one truffle go for? I wonder. Because usually a lot of the truffles I've seen are like golf ball size, but this thing fit in my whole hand. I was like, what the hell? Like this is but usually usually what they do is they would weigh it out, but because we graded a table side, like we didn't weigh it at the table, but like we would keep track of how many orders did we grade and then be like, okay, did it go down by this much? So is it like, if it's, I'm trying to think if it was like, I wish I could remember how much it was per serving, but the idea was like we weren't supposed to grate too much, but then it would get annoying because like people would ask you for more, and I'm like, this is an expensive item, I can't just give you extra. And then
Yeah.
there were a few regulars who would make a stink about it, and I'm like, guys, I can't just give away expensive items because it's like I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, we also talked about at the start how there's different names in different areas. There's 350 different kinds of pastas, and all the different kinds of names. So this could be a situation where they're borrowing from one of the different dialects or regions or countries that were bordering the Piemonte region. Now, with this one, you're talking about putting up a stink. Is there also you said the taste is a little lesser, but is the aroma still as strong with this, or does the aroma have a connection with how flavorful the actual truffle is?
No, there's a connection because that's the thing. The summer truffles are like the cheaper ones. So the summer, they're like what some places do. They're not supposed to do this, but they'll put summer truffle in the back on the plate, and they'll actually rub a little truffle oil on it to augment the
Uh,
flavor. But yeah, but that's the thing. The summer truffle doesn't really taste like anything. But then the winter truffle from Perigord are really nice, and then the white ones, they're in season October to December. So we're in that season now. But those again are 2,000 to 3,000 a pound. So it's like you're going to spend a bit of money. Like I saw him in Edit Tavern has a pasta now that has that on it. I was debating getting it. But it's like, you're going to spend more than you would for like a meat dish, but it's like that's why it's an expensive item.
yeah. In most places, you do pay what you get for. I mean, you get what you pay for, pay what you get for. I don't know, having
Yeah.
like dyslexia with words, not even letters, but yeah. Okay, so moving on now to the next dish. And here we have some shrooms in it, but we're going with what's it called? A spinach pappardelle with
Yeah.
duck ragu and mushrooms.
Sure. So this was another popular dish I think was on the menu for a while. This wasn't the best photo, but this is a photo someone else posted. I think you can tell pappardelle, it's the wider. Papare, I think, means to smother in Italian because it's like a wider, flatter noodle. So that's where the name comes from. Spinach, of course, in the dough. So it's a nice bright green color that I like. The duck ragu, it's a braised duck meat, but it's a mushroom-based sauce. So I think they simmer it.
Mhm.
There's mushrooms. You can see the shiitake pieces in there.
Yeah, that's nice.
Um, yeah, it's richer, heartier dish. This was another one that was popular. I think it was on the menu all year. I like this as well. I mean, I don't want to say I prefer one over the other because I feel like we're comparing like really different things. But this was another dish I recommended. I'm trying to think if this got put on the menu at Babbo. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be nice and strong flavors in this too, like the spinach infused in that pasta there. Then you have like the mushrooms. That mushroom sauce normally tends to have like a slimy kind of nature, especially if you're doing like a ragu. But then the what's called the shiitake itself normally has a stringier for being a mushroom. It's one of the ones that's more fibrous, I guess, in some nature. And then also the said what kind of duck is duck? So the duck in there, it's like just cuts of duck, like is it like little cubed duck or what's in there?
It it was braised meat, so it's not confit exactly, but I think it was like you take the duck legs, salt all this, you throw them, you sear them on one side, and you do a braising liquid, like I think it was like red wine based, probably some
Mhm.
vegetables and other things, and then you pull out the meat, and then like you shred the meat into pieces. So duck confit, you figure it's cured and then simmered in fat, and you pull that out. But I think with this, it was just braised in like a red wine type braise, probably like red wine stock, vegetables, aromatics, and then that meat gets pulled out, shredded, and it gets picked up with the mushrooms and other things. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that looks like a good dish. I can see why
Yeah.
you liked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
imagine why you like this. And yeah,
Yep.
that's some nice flavors. Let's think about the flavor combination there.
Yep.
Yeah, nice flavorful, some oomph. I know we talked about it. Emerald Lagasse, like bam, look it down. It's like it's got some it's got some character to this dish. I don't know really how else to say it. Yeah,
Yeah.
is it in the
Like
cookbook?
I don't think so. Let me take actually wait. There's actually a picture. Here you go. Let me see one sec. There's actually a picture right here. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
we'll post it on the screen. To try to remember to post it on the screen because right now it's just the foods on the screen. We're not
Yeah.
being shown. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
If after this, if there's any pictures that you'd like, or I can also look through here and see if there's anything that because
yeah.
there's some because you figure in here there's like some very nice photos that are professionally done. Let me see here though. there's pappardelle. Let me see here. It's fresh pappardelle. Yeah, because some of the recipes in here are like slightly different versions of the same thing. Let's see, fungi. So pappardelle. Yeah, this is just the straight. Yeah, this is just the straight pasta itself. But I mean, you could figure out how to like color it with different vegetables.
Okay.
There's actually a mushroom sauce in here. It's just straight mushrooms. It's Let's see here.
Excellent.
There's like shiitake, morels, porcini. This was, I guess, a spring dish they had at one point. Um, Sounds really good. Yeah.
Yeah, just imagine like a nice thick mouth of mushroom sauce with like some burrata on the side and some nice
Yeah.
toasted like maybe like a sandwich, like a nice ciabatta sandwich with like mushroom sauce and like burrata. Oh man. Anyway, so the way we do this, as Steven mentioned, like listen, we've borrowed some pictures from different places. We'll have some pictures from the cookbook and you scan them, get some more in. But Steven normally actually goes to the places and actually takes photos and gets videos
Yeah.
of the foods. And with some of the restaurants, the things that we're going to talk about, like with Seasonal, unfortunately, he was closed for some time, so he couldn't go back and get the pictures
Yeah.
and taken some earlier. But he's getting better at taking the pictures and the videos, most definitely.
Well,
So yeah.
some of these too. Some of the photos, like the ones I sent you, I took while I was there, like photos of the staff, the photo with me with the truffle, like things like that. Some of these I just took off their page because there was a Felidia page, but then of course that got shut down when the place closed. Lydia herself still has some old photos, but you kind of got to dig or search for them because it's like they're not up front. It's just her page on Facebook. It's her recent travels, her doing events. So like you'll find photos in there, but you really got to dig for them. And then so I'm trying to think. Yeah, then some of these were just like posted by other people that like I thought looked good, so I reshared. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Now on the next one, some of them are in the cookbook, as you mentioned, and this next
Yeah.
dish is also one of the ones
Yeah.
that will be in the cookbook, and that's the risotto with porcini and coffee, which is
Yeah.
also in the recipe. So now again, we talked about in the start. does risotto count as a pasta? Because like now it's like risotto, but then we talked about how the difference with the different kind of terms that are used to, because like I was thinking it's not risotti, but it's risotto. But then we talked about the different ones. I'm forgetting what the types of pasta. Yeah, one of the different ones for large was otti and otto for largish, and then oni was a different one for the end. For the suffixes, yeah, suffixes at the end. Yeah, so spaghettoni would be the largest, and then spaghetti. Okay, so for example, spaghettini is the smallest, spaghetti is the regular, spaghettoni is the largest. So this one, if they're talking about risotto, I don't know. Anyway, so risotto, that might be an exception to the rule. Anyway, tell us a bit about this dish.
Well, I was going to say with risotto, I think because risotto refers to the name of the preparation itself, it's not referring to rice, like it's
Okay.
rice. Because the thing is, if you're talking about the pasta, like, spaghetti, like you say, it's because you're not going to get one strip of spaghetti. So it's like you're saying I'm eating spaghetti, not I'm eating a spaghetto. Like you're going to eat one piece, which doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Whereas risotto is a specific preparation where you put in this stock, you cook it gradually, you keep adding, then you finish it with butter and cheese and whatever. Yeah.
That is a good point. That's
Yeah.
the kind of knowledge that you get from people who've actually been in the industry, because I had no idea that. That completely makes sense. So you can use different kinds of pastas and still prepare them in the risotto method. That's what you're kind of pointing out. And that is the difference between rice. Rice, as you all know who cook it, not in rice cookers. Even in rice cookers, it takes a lot longer of a time and the absorbs a lot of that water into it. Whereas pasta, of course, you pour out the water that's cooked it. Yeah, so yeah. Tell us a bit about
So this was in this is in the cookbook as well. So this was actually Chef Fortunato's idea. He talked about there was actually a porcini risotto recipe. It's more common, but he actually added espresso powder. Thomas Keller does this as well in one of his dishes, where he adds coffee, because the coffee gives it this like unique bitterness and kind of roasted flavor, which sort of complements the mushrooms. So it has an interesting sort of harmony between the flavors. Like he even says in here how the coffee plus the mushrooms that are a little sweeter, it almost reminds him of a cappuccino. I thought that was an interesting take. Yeah. And he does fried capers on top sometimes for balance, but the capers on the top at the end that are fried, so they're crunchy and you like bite into that with the other stuff. Typically he made it with stock. I mean, you can use water at home, but I mean water is kind of, whatever. Yeah, so shallots, mushrooms, all this. Carnaroli or arborio rice. Arborio, I think we've used it in at some places I worked, but a lot of people prefer carnaroli. It's a short grained rice, a lot of starch, so it bleeds out, and that's how you get the texture. Where some of the other rices, like from Asia, like the jasmine rice, are longer grain and they don't bleed out like that, so it's a different product. So yeah, it's espresso. There's some white wine. It's typical risotto recipe, but you have the espresso powder, the mushrooms, and a little grano padano at the end. I didn't get to try this one. Looks great though. I think it'd be fun to make and experiment with.
Yeah. Now, because you mentioned with the different kinds of rice that you can use in this now, are there certain pastas that you can use in this depending on how dense the pasta is? Because as we mentioned, with like the different kind of thing, if you cook pasta this long, it could just become too congealed and kind of messed up, so you won't really be able to get the same kind of thing.
Because that's the thing, the rice when you get it, it's super hard, like rocks basically. But as you cook it, that starch seeps out, and that's how it gets that texture. But there's a way to cook it where I learned in school where you have to like gradually add stock, but you keep mixing it. And as you mix it like that, the starch breaks down and the rice cooks, and that's how it gets that creamy texture. And then you finish it with the butter and cheese and stuff. So the idea is it's rice, but it's pourable. It's not like pilaf or something where pilaf you sort of simmer and the grains like they stay separate, and there's less starch, so that like the grains stay separate and they're more individuated. Whereas with the risotto, because they break down as you cook them, they sort of like seep together, and it's just like starchy. Texture is almost supposed to be. I remember that in school they were telling me the texture is supposed to be kind of gummy. Like like the rice is not supposed to be too soft, but there's a little bit of a chew. Like Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here I just checked this up just to get a quick idea on it, and there's a few sites I might include here, which is Memoria di Angelina. There's a risotto pasta cooked in the manner of risotto. Talking about the guilty pleasures I've had. So I guess like that's the kind of thing where it's like search engine optimization. When you're talking about certain things like recipes, they have all these like paragraphs of like talking about the thing before you actually get to the pasta. But yeah, there's also one here with like Stella Culinary with Chef Jacob, and professional pasta at home using the risotto method. So yeah, that's the thing. I had no idea it's a mustard. And here they seem to be using like shells even to it. So it's but this is something else. But yeah, okay. So you can do that in a different one. Yeah, all right. It's something to try. It's something I might consider doing as well.
Yeah.
This is something that I might put down to do. So yeah, I think right now we're almost halfway through the document, and I think we've gotten to about an hour and a half point. So with this, I think that's a good chunk. And this dish also, it seems like you can also kind of tweak it around a bit and also have a kind of dessertish type of dish for this. Like I can imagine using some coconut cream or some coconut milk to get it a bit, and you can even serve it chilled or something like that with some. You have the coffee powder. You just sprinkle some like grated chocolate on it or something. There could be some kind of dessert thing. We'll get to that later on. But from my experience, there's not too many desserts when it comes to Italian cuisines from different places I've been. It's rather straightforward fare when it comes to desserts in Italian cooking.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, what else can you tell us just a bit about Felidia? Just how was your experience working there? Like, I know it's closed now, so it's, what are your thoughts about the place? Like, the place is gone now, but you said Lydia is still working at other places. She has her cookbook. She has other restaurants. She has a cooking show, was it? So there's other things she's doing, but you personally, that's a part of your life that's done. I'm not quite sure if you will ever go back to the food service industry unless it's like your own place now that you've kind of moved on in a sense, but you still have a lot of experience in this. So you can tell us a bit just as we conclude this first part of it, and there will be at least one more part, maybe even two more parts of this. But tell us just a bit about your feelings about this restaurant and having worked there in food industry and things like that.
Sure. So, I mean, I really enjoyed working there. I mean, my original plan was to go back and just keep working, but of course, this whole lockdown thing lasted a lot longer than we thought. We originally thought it'd be a few weeks, and it was, we had a whole video where we talked more in depth. But it was going to be a few weeks, and the 4th of July, and then the fall, and then winter, and then by the time I came back here, the restrictions were still in place, but it's like got to at least kind of try and move on. So originally, because what I was going to do was go back, keep working, continue my current job, and then over time maybe try for the general manager spot, and then maybe go somewhere after that. But that's not happening now. But I got into investing, as we've talked about. I mean, we'll probably do a separate video talking more in depth about that. A lot I could say. But I enjoyed working there. I mean, I started as a front waiter because I'd gotten laid off from Netta and I needed a job, and I wasn't having good luck finding a management job, but I sort of lucked out because my predecessor actually quit, and then my GM approached me and he's like, would you be interested in going back to management? And I told him, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. So, the opportunity sort of arose. Yeah, we had a really good crew. I mean, there were people who were there a long time, which I think is important because it's a very high turnover industry, and longevity is important because with longevity you have consistency, and then it's like people can come back and they see people who've been serving them for years. The food is always going to be the same or better, so I think that's a big advantage. Whereas the challenge is if you have staff in and out, it's like you're constantly just training new people how to do the basic, and it's it doesn't really work too well. Yeah.
That is a very good point that you made there, where I guess they're doing this thing where now they're putting in machines into getting food and things like this, or people at home, now you get kind of meals and things like that. Like we talked about how, was this the restaurant that you mentioned where there's sometimes there's no music playing and people are like, what's going on? And I just kind of realized it's like, do I actually always have something playing when I'm eating? I'm like, either with people or listening to something on YouTube or watching something on TV or having some audiobook going on. Just there's a kind of detachment from the experience of food, of eating food in this more developed westernized world, where in our evolutionary environment, food itself used to be something where we all had to come together to even just acquire, stock that animal or plant those plants, harvest them. Then the cooking process was something where normally the mother or different people came together. It was like a communal type of thing. You sat down and took a break, and it was a kind of social event. But now we've gotten where a lot of food, a lot of preparation of food, a lot of eating and consuming of food is just kind of just out there. Like you don't see the faces behind the food. It's just stuff just comes to you. People don't know about the food. They don't know how to make the food. And I can see that aspect where it's like knowing the people who are serving your food can add some level of trust, or there's something extra in there in knowing what you consume, knowing the people who are feeding you what you consume versus just having something come in. And that's one of the fields where I think regardless of automation, there's going to be a constant demand for like actual food from other human beings in that kind of process. I think that's going to be something that will be maintained regardless of the technological advancements that come. Yeah.
Yeah, because then it's like you come to the place, the GM knows who you are. I mean, it's stored in the database. We used Open Table, I want to say, but there's different systems for this, and you can take notes on each person, like this person likes this corner table, this person is allergic to this, all this. And then what you do is you would print off a ticket with all these notes on it and give that to the kitchen. So then if it's like this person's allergic to mushrooms and dairy, then they that comes in with the order, and then they know, okay, make sure like that doesn't come out. And then it's like, I mean, you're supposed to ask for allergies anyway, but if it's someone who comes regularly, so it's like you just minimize that risk. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Well, yeah.
Or also what a person likes, like, oh, this person likes steak and lobster, so if you have a special, be like, oh, look, we have a steak dish that we think you'd like, so it feels more tailored to the individual people.
Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely, that's something that's hard to get at the typical like fast food type of place. That's why I just think like that it's good that you can go to like every single state everywhere and order like a burger and fries, a Big Mac and fries, and it'll be the same kind of general taste. There is something appealing to that, but that's just simply getting in calories to yourself. So I don't understand like some of the advertising of some of these things, like it's food. Like, why do you really advertise that way? But then I guess they have people who have crunched the numbers and understand, like, blasting you with enough images of the colors. Why do so many fast food places use the colors red and yellow? I think we talked about this previously sometime, where there's like something about those colors that kind of evokes food, like your mouth like salivates somehow. This is some aspect in that. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about in the cooking and in the You Are What You Consume series, into those other things, and we also talk about dishing on dishes, specifically food like this. So if you have anything else to say, you can say it, but I think we'll finish this first part of it. Most definitely check out the other You Are What You Consume series, where we talk more about Felidia and just the restaurant and things like that, some of the backgrounds. He goes into why he thought some of the things that he's more of his personal experiences of actually being there, part of the reasoning of why, the reasons that we're told about it, and he gives some more background into the principles that were involved in the restaurant and the founding and all these kind of things. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. We'll pick off with the rest of the dishes. I mean, I'm sure as the conversation goes on, we'll probably think of other things with the restaurant. But I definitely enjoyed working there. I'm glad I got this book. I mean, hopefully at some point I can recreate some of these dishes. So it's good. I'm happy to talk about the place. Yeah.
All right. So that's it for me.
Yeah.
Even stay on a bit longer after. But
sure.
Goodbye.
Yep. Bye-bye.